Haidete o Filoi. I'm Fletcher from amindforlanguage.com, and you're listening to Greeking Out, a podcast for ancient and Koine Greek learners full of tools, tips, and possibly tirades on learning Greek using comprehension-based methods. If that isn't familiar to you, check out episode 0, The Manifesto, for more info. In this episode, I'm talking with Tony Marsh. Tony's not actually an ancient Greek guy. I stumbled across him through some of his YouTube videos, and some of the things he talked about doing to learn languages seemed really interesting and useful and applicable to ancient Greek. So I reached out, and he was gracious enough to respond and do an interview. So there's some really actionable stuff here. It may require a little bit of adaptation and things, and maybe some things that you might want to try and tweak a bit, but I think it's overall really useful and practical stuff because he's rooted in conversation-based language learning, and that's a core element of comprehensible input. And for a lot of us, that's what we want to do. Output, speaking, is an integral part of learning a language, and this helps us figure out how to do that better. So grab your earbuds, headphones, speakers, however you do it, and get ready for another great episode of Freaking Out. Well, hi, Tony. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Fletcher.
So I ran across you, I guess, through the YouTube algorithm. And I'm guessing from some of the videos you've posted, you have a background in the military and learning languages and things like that. And
Yeah.
some of your stuff was, it looked interesting. I think I watched your language generator or something talking about the spreadsheets, and I was like, this is interesting. And so I reached out, and again, thank you for being willing to do something that's probably, in ancient languages, like I usually talk about, are probably a little bit outside what you've normally done. But then again, I've seen a couple of videos you just posted about Latin, so maybe not.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's my pleasure, Fletcher. Thanks for reaching out, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
So, like, how did you get into languages? What got you through the door?
Yeah. I grew up speaking only English until I was about 17, and then kind of overnight just realized I was like, you know what, I want to speak Spanish. And I had a girlfriend who was speaking Spanish, and we got married, and now have spoken Spanish almost daily since then. Moved to Brazil when I was like 19 or 20 and spent a couple months there. It's a long story. We had a foreign exchange student from Brazil, and I went and stayed with her. Realized how even more I was very into language, and then was looking for something to do, and discovered I could join the military and be a linguist. And so I did that, and ended up that was 2005. So I ended up going to the DLI, the Defense Language Institute, hoping to learn Mandarin, and ended up learning Arabic, mandatory assignment, and learned to love it and got way into it, and got out of that in 2009. I've basically been teaching languages ever since.
Okay, interesting. I have both an undergrad and a master's in linguistics, and my undergraduate field, what do you call it? Field linguistics, for lack of a better term, class was Jordanian Arabic. We had a speaker who worked for the university, and so at nights we went up and sat while he was monitoring the broadcast at the radio station. We sat and tried to learn Arabic as if we had been dropped in the middle of a jungle and had to figure out how to talk to people.
Okay.
And so we weren't allowed to use textbooks or look up stuff online. We just had to analyze it and go and chat with them.
Very cool.
So I walked out thinking, I wonder if I've got a bachelor's degree. I wonder if the military would be a good fit. But I knew I wanted to go in a more academic route, and decided that, maybe that wasn't quite the right thing for me. But I definitely thought about it. I was looking all over, like, all the different branches and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's a cool experience. I mean, being a military linguist, it's different, I guess, kind of unique. I enjoyed it. It was definitely happy I did it.
So how did that experience of, I'm assuming I've seen some videos. I think Ollie Richards has talked about, how the U.S. military trains languages. I think I've seen some of his stuff, but like, how does that experience of being in the Defense Language Institute, like, how do they teach a language? What is that like? Are you memorizing a bunch of tables and having to, nail grammar and pass exams like that? Or is it more conversational? Like, what is that experience
Right.
like?
So you have a teaching team of maybe 6 or 7 native speakers, as well as one MLI, which is military language instructor, who is usually a he's a former or she a former student themselves. And you get like a bit of time with that person per day too. But the rest of the time you have multiple periods. I don't remember how many it is. It's maybe say 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, something like that, and your teaching team rotates through. So in the morning, you may do like listening practice with Ustaz Yahya, and then like second period is like reading with Ustaz Yasmin or something like that. So you're cycling through the sort of modalities, right? The speaking, reading, listening, writing. Sometimes you do transcription.
Yep.
Sometimes you're watching the news. As for the sort of approach to the language, it's good. It's you. I always put it this way: like if you learn Arabic or whatever language at the DLI, like you learned it because you had to. Like it's 8 hours a day. There's study halls. Everything on Ali Richard's video checks out. It's a great video. And so you have to learn it. And if you can't, then you get kicked out and you do a different job. And no one kind of wants that because it's pretty sweet to be in Monterey and learn the language if you can. But yeah, so you're approaching it with different modalities, and then if we want, we could get into specifics of vocab and so on. But that's generally the idea. Teaching team cycling throughout the day.
Okay, so it sounds like it's based on. I mean, I'm assuming the goal of the DLI is to get people conversational, right? Like they're not expecting you to teach college classes in Arabic, but they need you to be able to chat with people and communicate so that folks don't get killed unnecessarily or something like that.
That's a big part of it. You're not, expected to be a grammarian necessarily, but you are tested in 3 ways at the end of the 63 weeks. One is it's in listening,
Hmm.
with a test called the DLPT, Listening Defense Language Proficiency Test. There's the same for reading. You don't have to produce any writing, but then you take an OPI, which is the oral proficiency interview, and that's how they test your speaking. So it is those 3 ways that you're being tested. And I always loved the OPI, and I still use the concept of the OPI in my teaching. The idea that if you want to say you speak a language, you have to be able to, you have to be you have to be OPI ready, which is that I could field 20 questions, 50, 100 questions from you. If I can answer those questions, that's a pretty good measure for how well I speak the language.
So again, I know like your background's not necessarily, ancient Greek. But one thing that I think a lot is showing up more and more in the ancient Greek teaching and learning world is the idea of let's speak this thing.
Nice.
Get it from simply something we've memorized and read to something we're writing and speaking and conversing in. So, I'm working with I've got some folks I'm building a small community to chat with, and there's some other folks on Discord that have got a server where you can meet up with folks and start speaking. But for me, I can read pretty well,
Yeah.
but it's a big jump from going from I can read something to I can now have a day-to-day conversation because again, most of our texts are not actually aimed at day-to-day conversation. It's kind of like, and the Spartans came in to burn the city to the ground,
Yeah.
and we sailed a bunch of ships around and,
Yeah.
beat up the Persians. Like that's kind of ancient Greek text, right?
Yeah.
Or, court cases where people are arguing about stuff.
Yeah.
It's one of my other guests said it's a bunch of cats fighting in a bag, um, which I thought was funny. So there's this interesting transition from reading this stuff to, okay, now I need to think, how do I talk day to day?
Yeah.
Um, so I guess how there's two pieces to that question. One of them is discovering the kinds of language you need to be able
Yeah.
to have those conversations. And then the other is, well, how do you practice them when finding speakers to practice with is difficult?
Yeah.
Because it's a much more limited set. So do you have any thoughts on how you would address those two different issues?
Right. That's a very good question. So if we started with a very hard-lined OPI approach, which again, I think how they say don't teach to a test or study just for the test, right? But if there was a test that you should train for, and perhaps teach to. I think the OPI would be that because it's a very hard line approach. It's like, look, if I want to speak ancient Greek, Fletcher, I want you to be able to ask me a bunch of questions and me be able to respond. If I can ask you questions too and you answer, even better. Then we complete the circuit, and now we're conversing in ancient Greek.
Right.
So if we take that hardline OPI approach, then the very first thing that I'm doing is aiming to answer 5 questions in ancient Greek. Maybe how are you? What's your name? Where are you from? What are your hobbies? And then from there, 5 more questions. And you may have seen this in a video. I make myself question cards. And I know the audience can't see it, but I'm holding index cards that are blank on each side. On one side, I put the question,
Yep.
how are you? Other side, I put the answer. I'm making 50 of those. I'm shuffling them. I'm pulling the question out. Look at the question, maybe read it out loud. You got to pretend you got to be you got to be the teacher and this. You got to be the OPI tester and the testee at the same time and quiz yourself. But I find that it's that back and forth. It's like this. Conversation is like tennis, right? If you and I are
Yeah.
conversing in any language, you ask me a question, you're serving, I return with an answer. That's the best way to practice. I mean, it's self-evident. The best way to practice tennis is by playing tennis, which is hilarious because people go, "Well, what's the best app for that?" And you go,
Yeah.
"Well, remember what I just said? The best way, what's the best app for practicing tennis? Wii Tennis? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like I'm really learning. So the point is, if playing tennis is the way to learn tennis, yeah, but I don't have a partner. Well, the next best thing is to go find a brick wall and at least hit the ball to the wall and bounce it, play with myself. And so I can I can give myself a mock OPI in ancient Greek. I'd pull it up here. It'd take me 10 minutes to give me chat GPT questions, 10 questions in ancient Greek, fill out 10 question cards. And I'm like, dude, I'm doing this until I can answer a 10 question OPI. And once I do that, I'm like, you know what? I think I kind of understand how the language works too. Oh, is it verb at the end? Is it verb at the beginning? Is I'm extracting the patterns.
Yep.
Next thing you know, I'm on question 25, 30, 45, and all of a sudden I'm going, dude, like I'm creative in the language. I'm pulling from previous answers to come up with better answers, and it just snowballs from there.
Yeah, and that I think that's why people want to do this is because it's another method of internalizing and strengthening what they've read in texts, what they've read in grammar books, of getting it to the point where the language is actually internalized and become language in the brain instead of simply being memorized facts.
Yes.
Um, one of the difficulties, and I can hear my audience screaming, is ChatGPT. And it's because at least in the early days, it was definitely not very good with Greek,
Okay.
because we've got modern Greek in there, which is different enough to mess things up. So, but sometimes it actually does decent. But there are other sources for things, right? Like we have some ancient conversation manuals from the Greek and Roman world that people you could pull from that. And then there's various academics over the years have over the hundreds of years have got some model conversation books of phrases they've extracted from things. So I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that working. Um, you know, grab the index cards and Anki too. I mean, I like physical stuff, but Anki, the flashcard app,
Great.
it's not the app in the sense of the app for playing tennis because it's just a digital flashcard thing, right? So it's still flipping cards and
Right.
whatnot, but Um, I like that. I like that idea of you're using those cards to model to create a model conversation. And because you've shuffled the cards, it's still got an element of randomness, which keeps it interesting and also just keeps it from being another memorized thing.
Exactly.
That's a great
One of the mantras on that is we're not going for recall.
hmm,
We're going for reflex.
yeah, automaticity to use the $5 word I think they throw around in the
Yeah.
academic circles.
It's one thing if you said, Tony, say that sentence again, and I'm like, okay, I'll try to say it again. It's another thing if you say, Tony, what did you say? Tell me what color's your hat? And I go, oh, well, my hat's black. And you go, oh, is your hat's green? No, 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 it's not green, it's black. I'm
Right.
repeating myself, but I'm not recalling. It's we're training reflex.
Right. And like you said, once you've said my hat is black
Yeah,
5 times, and then in another context you learn the word for blue, the sky is blue, then you can easily say my hat is blue
switch it
because
out.
you're going to recognize that black and blue have the same chunk, they fit in
There
the
it is.
same place in the sentence and they probably work the same way. And so
Exactly.
there you go.
The mantra with that whole switching it out once you learn blue, it's that we often think of grammatical rules. We call them rules, like grammar rules,
Yeah.
right? And the problem with thinking of grammar as rules is that usually what rules are is rules tell you what you can't do, right? Like you don't go to the if you go to the park and you see a bunch of signs that t have rules on them, typically they're only telling you what you can't do. It's rare to find a sign that says, "Hey, you can do this if you want." Like so it's, you can't do this, right? So by thinking of grammar rules as rules, it tells, "Oh, I can't do that. Uh-oh, better. Oh no, I'm gonna get this wrong. Better not butcher the language. God forbid I make a mistake, you know?"
Yeah.
We don't think of grammar as rules, but rather creative tools.
Yes. And patterns, right? Because we
Pattern.
often, you say English is a verb subject object language. Yeah, but we can violate that all the time. You know, the dog I saw in the park today. Okay, you
Exactly.
could say there's an implicit that I'm not actually voicing, but that gets into now we're arguing high level linguistics theory because I didn't say that. So was it actually there? But
Right.
I put the object in the beginning of the sentence, which is
Mhm.
not a normal English word order, but it works and you
Mhm.
understood it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, we break patterns all the time and we make up stuff too, right? Like, um, you take ends of one words and shove them in the beginning of another to make up a new concept. So yeah, we can
Right.
definitely play with patterns.
You could even go as far as to say that there is no such thing as breaking a pattern. If you tell me something in some language that I didn't know could be said, it doesn't it's a new I've never heard that pattern, but as soon as I hear that pattern, I go, oh great. So if I could say that, then I could also say this. It's very rare that there's one thing that you can say in a language that you can't switch. It's very rare that there's a statement that doesn't have a variable. I can think of one in English, long time no see. It only works to say long time no see. You can't say, oh, long time no talk. Long time no read a book or something. You know what I mean? So
Well,
it's very rare that something is one thing. If it's a pattern, it's a pattern. You can say infinite things.
well, and even with that, like my reaction when you say that is, okay, that's not what anyone normally says, but I know
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Hmm.
So communication is still happening,
True.
which I think in a learning environment like we're trying to get for Greek, you know, that works fine. I mean, what happens if we say something wrong? Are the Spartans going to come out of the grave and beat us to death?
Right.
No.
What's the worst? What's the worst that can happen?
And even if they do, it's going to take them a long time to get here sailing on a trireme from, ancient Greece. So we got plenty of warning, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, okay. So you can use cards like that is a way to create a simulated conversation environment that's still got some, I'll say, randomness. It's unpredictable. And I like that too because I think a lot of, maybe I'm generalizing here, but I think a lot of people that probably love ancient Greek may not be the most extroverted people, or
Yeah.
if they do, they may have, the Greek is really complicated. I don't know if you've ever seen a grammar chart, but a single verb can have hundreds of forms.
Sure.
So if you're trying to speak and think through all that, it's a nightmare. And you think, am I going to get all these endings right? So being able to have a card where you can simulate that in practice ahead of time
Yeah.
is sounds really helpful. And it
Yeah.
helps like with that fear, emotional barrier too.
Right. I always say the mantra there. We have tons of mantras here in the language matrix method of ours. But the mantra there, Fletcher, is it's this. If you can keep that, this is a rhetorical question. If you can keep this question in mind at all times, you don't even have to answer it. But if you can remember to ask yourself this question, you'll never be lost. It's like a North Star. As long as you can see this, at least vaguely, you know you're in the right direction. And that question is, what do I want to say and to whom?
Hmm.
Now, if I remember that question and my Arabic teacher or my Greek teacher says, okay, today you're going to learn 50 verb endings, I'm going to say, okay, okay, I guess. Like, or maybe all of the things in the room, like put this,
Yeah.
oh, this is a wall, a door, right? Um, I may or may not want to say that to someone, but if I can remember what do I want to say, now you're putting the horse before the cart. The chart first is putting the cart before the horse.
Hmm.
It's like going to the grocery store and buying one of every spice off the rack in the event that my recipe tonight calls for any one of them.
Right.
Learn to cook what you want to cook.
Yep.
Learn to say the things you want to say. From that, extract the patterns you need to say everything else.
Well, and playing off your analogy, the problem with just buying everything is it assumes that the thing you need is actually in stock at that store. It may
Might
not
not
have it.
even be.
And then you
Right.
come home to your recipe and you're like, well, I needed cardamom and they don't sell cardamom at this grocery store. So that was all a waste.
Plus, you're out 3 grand on every freaking spice.
Whereas if you just said, okay, I want to say this, how do I say it? You buy one spice
Start there.
and it's efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I'm curious here. Can I? So again, the first thing that brought me to your channel was that language generator, which was the
Yeah.
spreadsheet layout. Could
Yeah.
you talk about that a little bit?
It's awesome that you mentioned that because the generator that I showed in that video
Hmm.
is a great generator, and yeah, we could talk about that, but I want to talk about an even better generator that literally just manifested itself yesterday morning, and I've been using it with everyone I've worked with yesterday and today, and it is mind blowing. It's amazing. It's like everything. Okay.
Okay.
So without any background, like, oh, it used to be that, I'll spare you the life story. And I know people can't see this, so I'm going to kind of show you, but I'm also going to describe it with for anyone who can't see this, right?
Yeah.
So I have three vertical columns here, right? Column one, column two, column three. Now you could do this on a notebook, like I'm showing you. You could do it on a spreadsheet. The point is just we need three vertical columns,
Hmm.
okay? Now, in column one, you have a statement, and I'll go through this. We'll make it very short, very easy. It won't be, all right? But column one is a statement.
Okay.
Column two is a yes, no question, and column three is an open-ended question. Okay.
Okay.
So if you can generate a statement in any language. So for example, we'll use English as the stand-in, right? My statement is I drink coffee, right? So in my language, could be Latin, could be Greek, could be Nahuatl, could be Navajo, could be whatever you want. You want to say I drink coffee, okay? You're going to need a verb starting point. In our case, it's I drink, could be I drank, could be anything you want. I drink coffee, okay? Now, to convert column one into column two, we need a yes. So what's the yes no equivalent of I drink coffee?
Yeah. Something like, do I drink coffee?
Yeah, do you drink
You
coffee?
do you if you wanna, yeah.
Right? We're still that would work too.
Conversation.
That would work too. But we're going exactly. We're going for the back and forth tennis game of the OPI. So luckily, no one can see this because my handwriting is whack.
Looks
But
like mine.
it looks like yours good. So column tier it says, "Do you drink coffee?" Now, in your mind, you could be saying, "Man, I could play this game with Tony in Greek. I can say, I drink." Tony, do you drink coffee? No, I need to either say yes or no. And if I say yes, you'll say, yes, what? And I'll say, yes, I drink coffee. So I'm just reverting back. I'm just pulling from column one. If, do you drink coffee? Yes, I drink coffee. Or no. No, what? No, I don't drink coffee. So for my next statement in column one is I don't drink coffee. Now I have I drink coffee and I don't drink coffee. You ask me, Tony, do you drink coffee? OPI is starting. This is my first OPI question. Tony, do you drink coffee? Yes, I drink coffee. You want me to ask you? You want to complete the circle? Okay, Fletcher, do you drink coffee? Or again, we're doing this in any language. Okay.
Right.
The yes no question. You can keep generating. You can generate infinitely. You want me to learn such and such verb? You want me to talk on such and such topic? Let's make a statement on that topic or a statement using that verb. And then let's go back and forth comparing notes. Do you do this? Yes, no. Do you do that? Yes or no?
Mm.
To kind of tie it all together, we move to column three. That's open-ended question. And your question could be something like, what do you like to drink? What's your favorite? What do you have for breakfast? I drink coffee. What do you see?
Yeah.
And typically what's happening, I think this works in every language. The same form of the yes no question moves over. You don't change it. You just move it over into column three and then put the what, the who, what, where, when, why, how question in front of it. And all of a sudden you can say, Tony, all right, OPI is going on. What do you usually have for breakfast? I said, oh, I drink coffee. Oh, you don't eat? Column two, yes, no. You don't have anything? Sometimes. Sometimes what? Sometimes I eat breakfast. Oh, sometimes you eat breakfast? Column two. What do you have for breakfast? Oh, I eat bacon, eggs, and Oh, you eat bacon. What do you? And you just
Yeah.
if you can imagine the columns filling, it becomes like a ski slope. It truly becomes like a thing that you flow down, and as the topics change, the format's the same.
Mm. So yeah, that's a great that's a great piece of advice for how to, I guess prepare for conversations. And then that's something too that you could, I guess people are doing, I don't know if you really do a language exchange in Greek because again, you don't have native speakers. So, but if you have people studying together, they could use that to figure out, okay, well, how can we have this conversation together in a
Both
structured way?
can
And
both can practice populating the one, two, I'm calling it the 1, 2, 3 chart. Both can practice populating the 1, 2, 3 chart together.
yeah,
It's an
and that
infinite
makes sense.
conversation generator.
Okay, so column one is a statement, two is a yes no question, and then three is a uh, open-ended or W, what, when, why, where kind of
Exactly.
question. And if you went through each of those, you've got what, seven variations on that question, I think, something like
Sure.
that.
And some it, I want a quick point on that. You don't need to go out of your way to make a yes, rather a open-ended question with every who,
Hmm.
what, with every W question. Like you're not forcing anything. It's just if it lends, sometimes you don't even get to the third column. You just, okay, you get to the third column when you need to. You never force like, oh, you gotta say where do you drink coffee? It's not as good as
Hmm.
a good of a question. You see what I mean? But yes, there's infinite variations, but we never force a variation just to say we forced it. We want to keep our eyes on what is it that we want to say.
Back to that, our goal is conversation, not, um, I'll say, not complete coverage of the data
Exactly
or
right.
whatever. Um, Sorry, the linguist in me is coming out as I talk. Linguist, programmer, etc. Um, all right, so I have a question for you. Have you ever worked with, well, this is a stupid question because you said you learned Arabic. So, um, ancient Greek and Latin are highly inflected languages. So, endings of words change. Like even something as simple as those yes/no questions, like to say what kind of thing, you have to conjugate or decline the word for what kind, or like
Exactly right.
what manner, because it has to match the
Right.
noun you're asking about.
Right.
Um, so even that's what, four cases times three columns times
Right.
eight times singular plural. I mean, there's 24 variations of that word.
Right.
So have you ever worked with and used these methods with highly inflected languages, something like Russian? I'm guessing maybe Arabic as well is in that category.
Not too much, not too
Not too
much.
much. Okay.
There's a little bit of it in classical Arabic. There's three cases, but it's not a big deal. It's not like you have to do it in order. In other, you can speak Arabic without doing any casing,
Hmm.
declension.
Yeah, you can't do that in Greek.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So to your question, I've played with it. I can't claim like I speak Russian or Polish, but like I'm familiar with the process. And what I have to say about a highly inflected language is that putting the horse before the cart is even more important in
Hmm.
a highly inflected language because you're giving me two options. All right. So my teacher is I'm sitting here learning, Greek or Polish, and I have two options. One is to start with the noun chart with 24 declensions and then see if there's something in there for me. I'm buying tons of spices, right? Like I'm all,
Hmm.
like, okay. If I have a choice between being able to tell you I drink coffee versus looking at the word for coffee with 24 endings, including is it called vocative when you're calling out to
Yeah.
coffee?
Which
When are
I
you
was,
calling out to coffee? Do I need the case in point? Do I need every declension? Am I saying, oh, coffee, where art thou, coffee? Am I calling? You're not calling. So that's proof that I don't need every declension, right?
yeah.
So it's even more important to start with the thing you want to say.
Hmm.
When I did Latin the other day, I asked ChatGPT for 5 intermediate questions. It was only my second day, but I thought, let's see what it says. And it says, if you had infinite money, what would you buy? And I said, okay, if I had infinite money, I would buy a private plane. That was just my answer, right? And it turned out that I needed the word private plane in probably accusative, right? I would buy
Yep.
private plane. And the ending of private plane was something like, I think it was like aero navam privatam, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I took the phrase aero navam privatam and said, ChatGPT, give it to me in all of the cases, I'd be swimming in words and I would probably forget to even learn the one that I needed.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, because I learned eronavam privatam, the next time around that I needed an accusative, it was something like I drink coffee, and it was cafeam. And I go, cafeam. Cafeam is like eronavam privatam. You see? So I learned
Yep.
the patterns become clear to me. If you put the cart before the horse and say, remember 24 ways to say coffee or airplane before we even get into the OPI, I would be like, dude, I'm never going to get into the OPI.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And that's again, that's actually one of the other challenges with ancient Greek and Latin is that they didn't have airplanes. So what do we call this stuff? And then, people discuss and debate like, well, should we call it, what do we call a car? It's like, should we use
Right.
the word for wagon? Should we
Right.
use the chariot? Like, what are we going to call this thing? So, do we use
Well,
the
the
modern Greek
first the
word?
first answer it gave me for private jet is it said just say private jet. It said that chat, and then it said, well, but if you want to, it could be da da da. And then, but so yeah, I take your point. It's like, there's no private jets in ancient Rome? I don't think.
Yeah, yeah. Not that we know of. I have often thought it'd be fun to write like a ancient Greek sci-fi or time traveling kind of thing as a learner's text, but
Very
my
cool.
skills are not quite there yet, nor do I have the time
Social
for it. But
media is involved. Texting people is involved.
oh man, that'd be hilarious.
AI is there.
Caesar's texting Brutus about stuff, and then he gets stabbed. Yep. Um, that's funny. Okay, so let me go back to the OPI. We talked about the cards as a method to simulate that. How does how does that method how does that work for sitting down and like actually talking? I mean, I guess it's a stupid question. That's the whole point is to sit down and talk with someone. But like, how does that transition happen, or how do you teach, say, actually, let me ask this question. Have you ever had to teach someone who was in a course where they had required materials that were not great?
Uh, yeah, I think so. But we wouldn't use their materials.
Okay. So
Do it is like in your hypothetical scenario here. Do we have to use their things?
no, but you may have to help them cover the things that would
Okay.
be covered
Okay.
in those materials, or at
Okay.
least be able to internalize the patterns that are in those materials.
Gotcha. We can talk about that. That's a thing. That could be a thing.
So, so how would you apply, say, this OPI method to, which is again, that's oral proficiency interview. That's what it stands
Yes,
for.
that's
Okay,
right.
so the OPI method. How would you apply that oral proficiency interview prep method to someone who's got to be able to, again, write out these charts or write out, or be able to read, say,
Right.
a specific text and answer questions based on it?
Right.
How would you use that?
Yeah. Well, there's two parts to that question. One is it points to output, and the other to input. If they have texts they need to read, then we're talking input, and we can talk about that. If they need to learn charts so that they can produce it, then we're talking output. So if we start with output in this situation, so this is a person taking, say, Arabic in college and like needs tutoring to like get the grade or
Or
something,
yeah, that's the yeah.
for example,
Yeah, which
and
is
the
exactly what a
materials.
lot of people are doing with ancient Greek. They're in a classics program. They have to pass a some level of proficiency exam, which probably involves filling in charts and translating an ancient Greek text into English,
Yeah.
or maybe vice versa, depending on the program.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the brute force method, which is just memorize the chart. However, we're looking for something smarter than that, and so it makes me think of the yet another mantra, which is that there is a best teacher, right? Like, who's the best teacher? It's not me. It's not anyone. The best teacher is a question.
Hmm.
Goes back to the OPAB. But this is a full-on mantra. The best teacher is a question. I think it's even kind of a Socratic method thing. Like the teacher doesn't teach anyone; they ask you the question so
Draw it
you
out.
realize, right? Because look, if you tell someone something, like if you answer a question that they didn't know they had, it's a wash. Like if I tell you, oh, did you know that the Indonesian word for donkey is XYZ? You'd go, oh, I didn't know that until you brought it to my attention. So I just dug a hole in order to fill it for you. You're left at zero. That's the problem with telling someone something they didn't ask.
Yeah.
The wash. It's basically me giving you an obstacle. It's me saying, here, look, this is what you don't know. That's what language classes go. Here, look at all the things you don't know today. You're just like, oh, got it? No? All right, well, next day, here's more stuff you don't know. I'm just giving you obstacles. But if someone needs to know, if I ask you, then there's already a hole. You didn't dig the hole just to fill it. I already had a hole and you get to fill it in. So that's a gain,
Hmm. Okay.
right?
So so greatest teacher is
So
the question.
the best teacher is a question. So if I have that chart to fill out, and the chart is I drink coffee, you drink coffee, he, she, we, they, y'all. You're from Virginia, right?
Yeah, North Carolina
All
originally, but I
is
live
on
in
there.
Virginia,
North
so
Carolina, me too. Me too. All right.
was born in Raleigh.
Good deal. Mostly grew up in Raleigh. All right. So, so I need to fill in that chart, right? But I'm just thinking, okay, so Joe, Tuba, if I came along and said, "Hey, you gotta tell me you got a brother or sister, or you got a brother, does he drink coffee?" And you say, "Yeah, he drinks coffee." "Oh, does he drink coffee every day?" "Yeah, he drinks coffee every day." "What about your Your wife, yeah, she does it, right? So if I keep offering a question to
Okay.
you, then you have to push back against the question. Next thing you're like, oh damn, I can fill out the chart now.
Yeah, okay. I see what you're doing there. You've said, all right, I need to be able to produce these forms. So instead of just brute force memorizing this thing, because like you said, you brute force it, you pass the exam, but then the next exam, no.
Yeah,
Or most people that probably listen to this podcast, they're learning Greek because they want to, right? They want to be able to sit down and open up Homer and read it, and read the Iliad or read the Odyssey and enjoy it, right? Like that's their goal. They're not necessarily trying to pass an exam.
mhm,
Um, so for them, brute forcing something's only useful to a limited extent. But if there's a long-term method that would get internalize it like this, just say, look at that chart and say, how can I build questions that make me produce this form? Now we've got something, and you throw that in your stack of cards, which you then shuffle, and then it's getting reviewed at a over a spaced interval, which helps with memory and all this stuff. So it snowballs.
yeah. If you're brute force memorizing the chart, you're in recall,
Yeah.
and we're looking for reflex.
Yep. Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. I like that. I'm gonna start doing that.
Nice.
Um, Yeah. Okay. So you've got this. So you've kind of given us two tools here. This way to simulate the OPI thing, and then also you've got this generator where you say statement, yes, no question, open-ended question of some sort relevant to this topic.
Yeah.
And like you said, you may not ever need to ask the question, where do you drink coffee? Because, but what kind of coffee do you drink might be a whole lot more interesting and more common question too. Um, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um,
The second part of that was input, how to deal
yes.
with the text,
Mhm.
or perhaps how to deal with listening, right? Like if it's either you know, I guess they had Netflix back in ancient Greek, right?
Well, and that is another one of the issues as well, is that if you look at ancient Greek, there's a whole lot less available input out
Sure.
there that is comprehensible for
Sure.
a learner level. Although thankfully that's changing.
Right. So whether we're talking about listening input or reading input, the core principle of what of the strategy of list input strategy is that it's kind of the opposite of the way you approach speaking. And so if I wanted you to begin speaking, I would give you a verb starting point like I am XYZ. I like XYZ. I have X, whatever you want to say. That's column one of the things. You're start with a statement. Okay, so you got to think verb to some degree as the starting point when it comes to output, right?
Mhm.
Without a verb, just saying vocab is as nonsense as me saying if I said, "Oh, tomorrow in the park" or something, you go, what's you need a verb to hold it together. I say the verb is the seed of or the verb is the nucleus of the thought, and the
Yeah.
vocab orbits around the verb. So if the starting point of output is a verb, the opposite is true actually for input, um, which is nouns. Okay, so
Mm.
let's pretend I told you I was trying to make you guess the popular American Christmas movie, and I said lives, goes, travels, forgot, defends. You probably wouldn't know the movie, right?
Nothing.
That's me speaking in verbs. You're doing input, remember. So your
Yeah.
job is to guess you're always guessing. I mean, really the core thing of any input is guessing. Like you're looking to guess. If you already know, then it's not authentic input, right? Like so you have to guess what's going on. So the experiment here is if I tried to make you guess the Christmas movie using only verbs and said lives, goes, defends, you'd go, I don't know what it is. But imagine I said only nouns. And I said, young boy, nouns, adjectives, right? So, young boy, big house, big family, trip to France,
Oh yeah.
home,
Home Alone.
robbers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just in one I gave you the bones with no flesh, and the other one I gave you the flesh with no bones.
Right.
So if I'm looking at a Homer text, am I saying that right?
Hmm.
Homer.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this paragraph and I'm like, all right, I know some Greek. Like I'm doing my thing. I've been doing my thing. But I'm looking at this paragraph now and I need to figure out what's going on there. I'm not really scouring for verbs. If I have to, like there's no dictionary. I got 5 minutes to look at that paragraph and give you my best guess of what's going on in that paragraph. I might circle every noun in the thing,
Mm.
highlight every noun in the thing. And if I can read off 10 nouns from that thing, I'm gonna go, oh, it's Home Alone.
Okay. I Yeah. So that's. All right, so that's useful too because a lot of times with these texts, we hit sections where um, there's a bunch of words that only show up once in like the entire corpus, or maybe it's once in the story. So is it really worth trying to memorize that word? No. It may not be worth even taking the time to look it up. But if we can say, well, that's a verb, I can kind of guess what's going on by just looking at the nouns. I can
Right,
basically skim this paragraph and move on and keep going with the story and keep
right,
enjoying this text.
right.
So that, I mean, that's a great just reading strategy. Um,
Reading time isn't the time to be memorizing. I'm almost we're almost saying overall that it's not about memorizing,
right.
but okay, we want to memorize, you want to learn, fine, nothing wrong with that. So if you want to memorize something and learn a new word, then grab your dictionary and look it up. That's totally fine. But I'm just saying that as the main way of is that reading time isn't necessarily the time. Reading time is your time to understand as best you can
Yep.
move on. Because it's going to be the same thing. Okay, there's a random word that only appears once. You want to learn it? Fine, learn it. Grab your note, jot it down, do whatever you want. But the point is that that's not the main reason you're reading. The main reason you're reading is to understand what's going on.
All right. So let me pose another question at you real quick as we're, here. Again, with ancient Greek, you've got a set corpus of text, right? We know, for the most part, like we know the words, we know everything Homer said, and that they've been studied and analyzed. We have data ad nauseum, etc. So we know what's there, right? So you'll get a vocabulary list that says you want to read Homer, book one.
Okay.
Well, you get a list of every word in that book, and you can look at it and you can sort it by frequency and all that jazz. So say somebody wants to try to look at those words. Maybe they want to say, I want to I want to make sure I know the 50 most frequent words in this chapter so that I don't have to look them up
Mhm.
um, as I'm reading. How would you recommend someone going about learning a vocabulary list? Or back to our college example, somebody has to pass an exam where they have to be able to just give the meaning of these words.
Mhm.
How would you say recommend somebody to approach that?
Okay, so I have a list of 50 words that I probably don't haven't seen before, but I will need them for the next chapter to
Yeah.
read.
Yep.
I'm gonna I'm gonna look at them big picture, and I'm gonna go, okay, so there's those 50 words. I'm just gonna look at them. I'm gonna look at them, you know. And then if something stands out to me, like, ooh, that looks like a cognate, I'm gonna go, okay, well, that's a cognate. That's cool, you know. And then I see a word, ooh, that doesn't even look like anything. And I'll kind of look at it and I'll go, okay, that kind of sounds like the word for Indonesia. It has nothing to do with Indonesia, but it kind of sounded like Indonesia, but it really means, like the hull of the ship or something, but it sounds like Indonesia or something. I'm just gonna be like, oh, okay, so yeah, the hull of the ship is kind of like, so I can kind of imagine like the ship is kind of sailing around Indonesia and I'm kind of underneath looking at the hull and we're in Indonesia. So somehow creating some crazy connections, right? The Japanese word for octopus is taco.
Taco.
Taco. You can remember that forever, right? Why?
Done.
You know what
Yep.
I mean?
I have a mental image of a taco with
You
eight
know what I
legs
mean?
coming out of it.
I mean, there's the mind palace, that type of
Yeah.
memory type of thing, something like that, right? And then if I don't remember it, then so be it. It's going to come back up. At least I'll remember that I had seen it.
Hmm.
And then once I come to it in context, gives me even a better chance of remembering at that time learning it because it came in context. So
I'm guessing here too, if we go back to the conversation method too, you probably could find a way to embed those words in a question answer kind of dialogue too. Um, maybe sub some of the new
okay.
words into a sentence like that so that you're,
Yeah, the
practicing
hull of
talking
the
about them.
hull of the ship is Indonesia. Then I'm gonna make if yeah, that we could do that. Could do that.
Hmm.
Grab a question card and say, "What's the bottom of the ship called?" Como se llama? However, what's the?
Yeah.
I'll go. It's called the hull. Boom. Kill two birds with one stone. Better at the OPI, and I learned the word. So yeah, could definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. I I really appreciate you taking the time to
Sure.
jump on and offer some techniques. If if people are interested in working with you either as coaching and learning Greek, or if you would offer something like that, or okay, so maybe not coaching for
No, we
ancient
can do it.
languages,
We can do it.
but if they're
I like working with people that speak language or are learning languages I don't. It's like coaching. You're right.
so yeah, so coaching. So if you were going to do something like that, or if they were going to do one of the other languages that you teach, like Spanish or Arabic, or I see I've seen Portuguese on your site, on your list of videos. So, and I know you have your website.
Yeah.
Um, pass them listed as well. But how can people follow your work and get in touch with you if they're
Sure.
looking for help?
Right. Well, my website is Lang Matrix, Lang, Matrix, all one kind of word there. So there's that, and there's a contact button, and I'm very open door. I like when people hit me up and say, "Hey, can we have a chat?" I do free consultations all the time, just a half hour kind of Calendly. That's all on that same website. And then my YouTube channel where I post a lot of these ideas is I think it's just Tony Marsh, and the handle is I think at Language Matrix.
Yep.
But
And I'll put all that in the show
Tony
notes.
Marsh is good too, so
Oh, okay. Well,
and
cool.
I've
I mean, yeah, and you got quite a bit on there already. Um,
been working on it.
yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
yeah, best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Fletcher.
Yeah, cheers. Intro and outro music is Funky Thanksgiving by Admiral Bob, used with gratitude under Creative Commons 3.0 Attribution License. The track can be found at dig.ccmixer.org.